My name's Brian Grimes. I'm the city manager for the city of Ballinger. We want to welcome you today to the town hall meeting. Today we have Congressman Mike Conaway from Midland, Texas. Mike is a CPA, very successful CPA in Midland. If I remember correctly, he's also in East Texas.
State line.
Yeah, I can remember the math.
East Texas State.
He played football at East Texas State. He's been a member of Congress 10 years. We there?
13.
13. Okay.
Wow.
I've got Perry and you all together. Congressman Conaway is chairman of the House Ag Committee, a very powerful committee, and something that's near and dear to the folks not only in Ballinger but in Reynolds County. He has represented us well personally for the city of Ballinger. He's been our strongest advocate of our delegation, and he's a tremendous asset to us and our community and to Reynolds County. And so without further ado, Congressman Mike Conaway.
Brian, thank you for the introduction. I appreciate that. Thank the City Council for letting us use your chambers.
Yes.
Great turnout. I'm not sure we filled all the chairs before. This has been fantastic. Must not be much else going on in Ballinger this afternoon. I was talking to high school guys. They play Comanche tonight, and I represent both Comanche and Ballinger. So but I hope they'll do well. I'll make a few comments about things that are happening in D.C. that I think that maybe cover the waterfront, and then we'll turn the rest of the meeting over to you to ask questions. The high school kids are here. They're in. All right, that's President calling. You need to take that. They're in AP classes, or not AP, dual credit, and so they're here as a high school student as well as college freshmen. To get credit both as a high school graduate class as well as college credit. So they'll ask some questions too as well. The first thing is continue please to pray for the folks affected by hurricane.
Right.
And then all the other stuff we do as Texans, we will do that. But first and foremost, keep praying. The initial response, the initial stuff that's going on right now, everybody's adrenaline's up, going at it 90 miles an hour. 3 weeks from now, it won't be on the front page of the newspaper, but the folks affected, it will still be their life. And everything else kind of moves on, and so let's just keep a systematic prayer on their behalf moving forward. And I was talking to Andy here a second ago. The things we're hearing so far, we're not seeing anywhere near the kind of poor response or disorganized responses that we saw in Katrina and others. Sounds like there's a lot of stuff going on. It's managed, it's under control. Things are showing up where they're supposed to, and they're doing this up now. A lot of bad stuff happening, no doubt about that. But in terms of the governor's office and the Department of Defense and National Guard and local authorities, it seems to be managing this horrendous wreck really, really well. Some of that's lessons learned, but also it's advanced planning that every community goes through to respond to this stuff. Keep praying for those folks, and then whatever else you want to do, absolutely get after that as well. So we spent most of August thinking about spending, tax reform, healthcare, infrastructure package, all that kind of stuff. And now this is showing up. So September is going to be a pretty aggressive month anyway, but now then with the response to Harvey, it will be even more complicated. So let me take them in order. Spending is the first thing, because the one thing that Congress has to do year in and year out is provide for funding for the following fiscal year. The federal fiscal year starts October 1st, runs through September 30, and so we have to appropriate money for next year. And given the White House is under control of the Republicans and the Senate and the House, we thought this year would be the first year in a long, long, long time where we could actually get the work done on appropriations in an orderly basis. And so in July, the House Appropriations Committee, for the first time in over 16 years, I think, finished all 12 of the individual appropriations bills. So we spend money, we spent over $1 trillion on this effort. It's broken up into 12 different slugs. Department of Defense is the biggest, and the other folks share the rest of it. And so in July, the committee got it all done. We then brought 4 of those bills to the floor. Defense, Milcon, VA, Energy and Water, and I need to find out, I can't remember what the other was, but 4 of the 12. And brought it to the floor. There were hundreds of amendments that were proposed, debated, argued about, voted on, all this kind of stuff. and then we passed that bill. So the other 8 that'll be done, those were supposed to be next Tuesday going forward, early in September to get that done. Send it over to the Senate. Not sure what the Senate might or might not do, but we would have gotten our work done in the House of Representatives, and that's all all that we can control. Our senators control the other side of this deal. So that was going to be a pretty good, 2 weeks so on those other 8. I personally think that Mitch McConnell has one more bite at the healthcare apple. That Thursday night before we were in July when we were up, that was the next day was going to be the last day. I went to bed thinking, all right, I've got 3 listening sessions around the country. I've got 3 town halls for that Wednesday. I'm going to get up. The Senate's going to pass something. The Speaker's going to decide to keep us in D.C. until we get it to work out. And so I'm thinking I'm going to have Friday, and I'm going to have to start resetting all of those dates around to accommodate the fact that we're going to stay in D.C. and get this healthcare thing done. I turn the TV on first thing, and I don't hear anything, but I just see the graphic that 3 Republicans voted no. You could have blown me over the phone. Absolutely stunned that we didn't move. Senate didn't move it forward. So the House has done its work. We've got a bill over there. We expected the Senate to pass something, and then we'd go to conference, work out those details, and then get another package that both houses vote on, send to the president, and continue to move forward on certainly the repeal and replacing and all the things that need to get done with respect to the healthcare system, moving that law forward. It failed. And watching the coverage afterwards and seeing McConnell's reaction when McCain voted no, he was, he's pretty upset and I think surprised that, McCain comes in on Tuesday night, votes to move the process forward. Wednesday and Thursday, the bill had debated and amended in the Senate, got better, not good, but better. And then Thursday night, he voted no. And so, we'll stay tuned. McConnell, love him or hate him, is a wily, experienced legislator. And so my guess is he's been spending the month of August trying to work some magic because he knows just how important it is that we move this thing forward. And so I think he's got one more shot at it before we then have to pivot to tax reform, which would actually be big. We'll take up the Harvey response, the initial, what do we do for the between today and end of September. That bill will get done next week and then to the president's desk. And then the other things will fold into spending as well. Tax reform is the other big ticket item that most of us believe we need to do. It is essential. It is a burden on all of us as individuals. It's a burden on business. And quite frankly, I'm amazed that our economy continues to grow ever so slowly under the weight of this tax scheme, as well as all the over-regulation that has gone on over the last 8 years with President Obama's efforts to manage every single minute aspect of our lives. And so the problem with tax reform is it's like heaven. Everybody wants to go there, just nobody wants to die to get there. Right? So everybody wants tax reform, but they don't want to give up their little deal. So every deduction, every credit, every special tax treatment has an advocacy group, people who like it. So when it comes to tax reform, it's like, all right, I've got some deductions and credits that I like, and we're gonna have to eliminate some deduction credits to increase the amount of income that's taxable, but at lower rates. And so to do that, you do away with deductions and credits and special tax treatment. So I want to keep mine, but Brian's got a son he likes that we not be able to keep his. Those got to go away. And Andy, you got to give up yours as well. Right? So we can't be that parochial. We just can't. We have to get this done. American businesses trying to compete around the world, and we have to compete around the world, are doing it with one hand tied behind their back with a tax rate that's greater than any place else they try to compete in. And so this is essential that we get that done, both healthcare and tax reform. So in the healthcare arena, our bill has $1 trillion of taxes that go away under the healthcare bill. So you could call it healthcare tax reform, but nevertheless, $1 trillion. There's also $1.15 trillion in spending that goes away. So our healthcare bill actually reduces the deficit by $150 billion. If we don't do that, then that $1 trillion survives, and we have to take it up on the tax reform that we've all been talking about. Well, if that happens, then we may not be able to get the rates as low as we want. We may not be as fulsome as we need to be. So that's why it's important that McConnell take one more shot at trying to get the healthcare thing done, and then we can pivot to the tax reform. We've got 52 Republican senators. Most things require 60 votes in the Senate to move forward. Simple majority in the House, but the Senate's got a different set of rules. You can like the rules, you can hate the rules, but we're a rules-based system, and them's the rules. There are two instances where you can move a bill through the Senate with only 51 votes. One of those is what we're using right now. It's called reconciliation. It's just a name. Don't worry about trying to figure out what the word means. It's just a name. Comes out of the budget each year. Each year, if you pass a budget, you can create a reconciliation bill or instructions to deal with spending, to deal with taxes, and to deal with debt. And if you do that and create a bill that cuts the mustard on the rules, the Byrd rule, then it only takes 51 votes in the Senate to move that. Well, that's what we're trying to do with tax reform and healthcare. So the 17 budget created budget instructions to take up the healthcare reform, repeal, replace, 51 vote model, and that's what we did in the House, sent it over to the Senate, and that's what they're working with. The complicating factor is that the rules also say you can only have one reconciliation bill alive at a time. So we've got the healthcare bill alive. If we just create the tax reform reconciliation bill, it kills the healthcare thing outright. So that's why we haven't passed the 18 budget, because when you pass, this comes out of the budget. So we pass the budget, create that bill, then it would kill kill our efforts on the healthcare side. So we're trying to nuance that. If the healthcare thing finally dies and goes away, then I think you'll see us do the 18 budget, create the reconciliation instructions, and move to the tax reform piece. The problem is you're not supposed to make the deficit worse using reconciliation. So that $1 trillion I was talking about, we'd have to find $1 trillion of spending somewhere else to make that deal work. So a lot of inside baseball. All you care about is getting it done, moving to where we want to. On tax reform, and then we'll talk about whatever y'all want to talk to. The broad 10,000-foot model that we're talking about right now is lowering the corporate tax rate dramatically, eliminating the old depreciation schedule concept where you buy a piece of equipment, a chair, and you have to depreciate over 7 years. You just immediately deduct the cost of that. That's on the business side. On the individual side, you wind up with a mortgage interest deduction, a charitable contribution deduction, and some sort of offset for retirement planning. And just about everything else goes away. And the idea is to be able to file your tax return as an individual on a pretty small piece of paper. For that, you get much lower rates. Death tax goes away altogether. On the death tax, don't be lulled into this argument that, well, rather than do away with the death tax, why don't we just set the exclusion at a number that only picks up Bill Gates and Warren Buffett at a really low rate, right? Because that's a fake, head and shoulders fake, because some new Congress could lower that exclusion, raise that rate easier than they could reinstitute a new tax, a new death tax. So let's stick with our guns and eliminate the death tax altogether. And then future Congresses, it would be harder for them to reinstitute that moving forward. None of us know enough about what's being planned specifically to be really for or against the deal, right? We know we want to do it, and we're for that idea, but until Ways and Means releases the language, until your CPAs and financial consultants can run you a projection that says, this is what you look like under the new scheme, this is what you look like under the old scheme, then, because none of us really appreciate the impact of lower rates. When we think about changes to deductions and credits, we're thinking the high rates we're currently paying, and those will go away, but we get much lower rates. So keep your powder dry on specific pieces that you hear talked about. Question it, understand it, try to figure out what's going on. But once we get the full package and you get to see it, then projections can be run for you, and you'll say, all right, now I've got enough information and data in order to make an informed decision on where I am with respect to that important deal. There will be an infrastructure package of some sort. This just got a third on President Trump's list. The only question I have there is how do we pay for it? We've borrowed a lot of money from this generation, a lot. And shame on us for doing it. And so as we look at the infrastructure package, I'm not particularly interested in borrowing more money from them. Now, Harvey and everything else, we may have some stuff that's going on there, but with respect to an infrastructure package, how do you pay for it's a big question. We have a lot of corporate earnings hung up overseas that if they brought it back would be taxed at really high rates. Well, maybe as a part of this tax reform, we can do a one-time reset of that concept, let the other companies bring that money back at a much lower rate, peel off those new revenues and do our infrastructure. With respect to rural America and the infrastructure plan, I'm pitching broadband access as a part of that fix because we're not going to get these guys to come back to Ballinger if they don't have the same kind of connectivity that they've gotten used to when they leave. And may just be my carrier, but I'm on a phone call with one of the guys off my Intel staff between here and Bron, and it only dropped 7 times. He's in Hawaii, and I'm here anyway. So infrastructure for me, broadband and additional access. So you probably listened to me more than you really want to. Now, anybody want to ask a question? No subject matter off the table, whatever you want to ask. Yes, ma'am.
I want to know about your farm bill.
Okay.
You have a big farm bill, I understand.
Well, we're going to. The current farm bill expires on September 30th of 2018. I've got 13 months to get it done. I want to get the new one in place ahead of time so that on October 1st of 2018, the system knows what it is. Now, the farm bill includes not only the Title 1 and 2, which are the big ticket items for conservation and income support, but it also includes SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So I want to get them both done on time and moving forward. We've had 5 listening sessions around the country. We did one here in San Angelo. We had 600 people show up for our listening session in San Angelo. Could have been better. We've done one in Florida, Minnesota, California, San Angelo, and then 2 days ago in Decatur, Illinois. So we may have one more. But anyway, we've gathered the data. We'll actually start writing the legislation soon. The leader has told me I can have floor time to try to get it done sometime November, December, January, February. So sometime in that time frame, he'll give me a week for the floor. I'll back up about 10 days, run it through committee, and then move it forward. I want to, Pat Roberts, who's chairman of the Senate Ag Committee, wants to do kind of the same schedule. So that bodes well for us getting it done. The 4 items of most notable are getting cotton back under Title I, fixing the dairy margin protection program, dealing with foot and mouth disease vaccine bank, and fixing, we've got something called the agricultural risk coverage, and on county level, it's getting weird answers, it's getting weird distributions between counties that are contiguous. So trying to find a fix on that. With respect to SNAP, the big ticket item there will be trying to strengthen work requirements and move that program from where it is right now to one that says we consider success of the SNAP program are folks who get on the program and then for whatever else is going on get off because they did start making enough money to take care of themselves. We had some dramatic testimony 2 days ago in Decatur. A lady got up and said, I was a SNAP recipient. I was 18 years old, I had a 3-year-old daughter, and I decided I needed to go to college. The motorcycle was in. I go to college, I got some folks helping me, and SNAP was the integral part of getting me through that experience. I got my teaching degree, I got a job, I'm now in administration. My daughter's being raised in the home where public assistance means what we do for other people, but I used it as a trampoline.
Right.
Most Americans would be supportive of that kind of help.
Right.
And so moving the SNAP program that direction. There is a group of folks who will always help. Frail elderly, mentally and physically disabled children, that kind of stuff. We're not going to hurt them. But to the extent we have people in the program who should be working, then we need to help them. Now, people who are on SNAP or need housing assistance, whatever, those are symptoms of something else going on in their life. And so until we deal with whether it's drugs, or lack of education, or bad decision here or there, whatever, until you deal with that, then the cycle continues. And so Paul Ryan wants to do a major welfare reform look in 2018. That's assuming we get all this other stuff done, which would begin to focus on that idea, whether it's child care, housing, food, whatever it is. Those are symptoms of something else going on in a person's life. And until we effectively deal with that through case management and those kind of things, you're really just kind of chasing yourself. So stay tuned, but I'm excited about getting this thing done on time.
What was your reference to the charitable contributions?
That would be a deduction. You get it on your individual tax return, mortgage interest, charitable deductions, and something for retirement planning. So you peel off some of that earned income to set aside for retirement. Those would be the 3 deductions probably left on an individual basis. All right. You guys think of your question? All right, yes.
Public safety, why are we not nowhere doing anything with the big, goons that are showing up with their masks, their black suits, their shields, their clubs, pepper spray, beating people,
Yeah.
and they escort the people that are out.
Those are local responses that are necessary to.
They need to be somebody somewhere,
Yeah.
make some defensive statement.
Yeah.
This ain't right.
The left needs to own Antifa. And is that another pronunciation, Antifa? Thugs that
Yes,
are doing that.
that's the word.
The left needs to own those guys, and they need to be disavowing that issue. But local law enforcement is where that is.
I understand, but nobody's doing it, nobody in.
Well, I mean, we've got that
You've got
one
a
instance,
microphone,
yeah,
say
we've had
something.
that one instance where they, in California, but that's California.
Yeah.
So,
Thank God you're not California.
I agree with you, but, Brian's police department and you guys, I don't think we put up with that here about it. But that's a local, response to those thugs in that regard. On the broader statement, they need to be disavowing, those guys the way we disavow the neo-Nazis and the hate groups that are on the right side. That group is just as bad, and just as mean-spirited. And
So Nancy Pelosi did this on in her second statement, her first part.
somebody ought to beat the dog out of her because they did that to Trump. Y'all had a question?
What is Congress planning on doing in helping the effects of Hurricane Harvey?
Okay. We'll come in on the backside and try to pay for it. We have in place already the executive branch, led by President Trump, and all the resources he's deployed against that. You're seeing Department of Defense pushing in assets. You've got FEMA doing all those kind of things. How do you pay for it? And that'll be what we take up next week, is that initial tranche. We also have a flood insurance program that's bankrupt. It owes about $20 billion right now from previous floods, and it's who knows what this is. It's only got about $6 billion of money left it can borrow. Unlike other discretionary programs, this is an insurance program that if I bought insurance, flood insurance, I darn well expect to get paid. And so this is an insurance obligation that we as taxpayers have to make good on. Well, we're talking earlier, but that could be $190 billion overall cost. I don't know how much of that is response to homes that were covered by flood insurance in that regard. So we'll have to deal with that. And that program expires in the calendar year. So we've got to fix that as well. So legislative action will be more along the lines, how do you pay for it? Because now if there are things that show up where things couldn't get done because of a legal restriction or whatever, then yeah, we take that out. But most of what we'll do is pay for the good work that's going on right now in response to that. Yes, ma'am.
What term limits for Congress?
No, ma'am, I don't. If you like term limits, then what it ought to be, instead of calling it term limits, it should say, I want to fully empower the bureaucrats in DC to run that ship, and I don't want my elected officials involved very much at all, because that's what the impact of term limits does. I have a term limit, comes up every 2 years. You vote me in, you vote me out. Typically, folks who like term limits are mad at other districts that they don't vote in, because there are poster children for why you want term limits. I got that. And lots of folks have been up for way too long. They go home. But they're doing something that their voters like. And I don't want to take it out of the hands of the voters mechanically to make that happen. So term limits doesn't work in California. You see the kind of nonsense that goes on out there. Some of that's a result of term limits they have, and they're constantly moving stuff around. I only intend to serve in the House of Representatives. What term limits would do is drive me to constantly be looking for that next elected job and all the turmoil associated with that. But the real reason, the most reason is, and I can explain it this way, we cannot audit the Department of Defense today, the financial statements. They spend over $600 billion of our money a year, and we can't audit it. So for the last several years, I've been on a quest to make that happen. Now, starting October 1st of this year, fiscal 18 has to be audited. So we've been making progress, and that's been one of my big fights I've had. It's unlikely that if I'd had that for 3 terms and then I leave and my replacement's probably not gonna have that, pick that issue up and move it forward. The bureaucrats are masters at passive aggressive conduct, saying, okay, we agree with you, and they just don't do it, right? And so if you want bureaucrats, unelected, faceless folks that you could pick up a lineup, having even more authority than they already have, then circulate your members all the time. And I just think it's not a solution that fixes the problem that we want to fix, and that is there are folks in other congressional districts that we don't like and shouldn't be there, and how can we get them out if their voters are still voting them in? Well, if I'm doing my job, then vote for me. If I'm not, then kick me out. Well, yeah, but you've got the power of the incumbency. Got that? 2010, we defeated 63 Democrats, sitting Democrats. We beat the chairman of Armed Services. We beat the chairman of Budget. We drove the chairman of Appropriations out. He decided not to run for election because he knew he couldn't win. So every once in a while, voters get so fed up with what they see going on, and 2018 may be one of those. But every once in a while, you flush a bunch of incumbents out in spite of the power of the incumbency. So if I'm not doing a good job, and I put my hand up, and I've got it up now for 18, then kick me out. But term limits is not a solution that, to me, that makes sense. And I've been doing this a while, and I've got a commitment to you that as long as I'm in leadership, moving up, got responsibilities, that kind of thing, I'll stay. But when I top out and not go anywhere else, I'm coming home. And so it's really up to the voters to decide how long somebody represents.
It's got to be kind of a scary time for you.
It was.
Well, in the fact that, I mean, conservatives, what we call the Republican Party, has control of the government, and there is so much going on, and so much divisiveness and there's such a vision that we would like to get to that you can't do in 2 or 4 or 6 years. That you're kind of under the gun the next 2 years to even get past 2018.
Yeah. Well, we live in an instant gratification world. I watch a lot of Law and Order TV shows. Perfect. Got a crime, get them caught, get them investigated, get them caught, get them in trial, get them in jail. Boom, 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 we're done. Out. Well, that's who we are today. And quite frankly, we didn't get to this wreck like that.
No,
and we're not going to get out of this wreck that quickly either. So part of it is to have legitimate, honest conversations with your constituents as to what can and can't get done. If you were around me much in 2016 during the campaign, what you would hear me say is, look, I'm worried that we're going to overpromise and underdeliver, because we'll keep the House, but if we keep the Senate and we get the White House, then it's being sold as if, well, we can fix everything at that point. But it was always about 51 versus 60. It was never in the cards for us to get to 60. We were always going to be, we were 54 and we lost 2, right? So we managed the Senate, 60 votes controlled the Senate. Well, we oversold what management of the Senate means. And as a result, we're seeing what's going on now, because we're just not moving as quickly as we'd like to. A little history lesson real quick. 2009, President Obama steps in. Great enthusiasm. Folks were really excited about him being there. Harry Reid had 60 Democrat senators. And Nancy Pelosi had 254 House members. They should have run the table on us. We couldn't stop anything. Couldn't stop in the House, couldn't stop in the Senate. They should have run the table. Pelosi couldn't get the health care thing, Obama's signature issue, through the House at all in 2009. Christmas Eve in 2009, the Senate finally passed something. And they knew it was screwed up. They knew it was not a very good bill, but it was something they could refer to and take and brag about. Ted Kennedy dies. A Democrat's appointed by the state Senate, the governor, to fill out his to the special election. Well, of course, Massachusetts is going to elect a replacement, a Democrat replacement. Except for Scott Brown, Republican, 59 votes. Well, now they're stuck, because now we can stop stuff in the Senate, and they did. All right, so fast forward to March of 2010, the Senate knows that they can't get a reconciliation, they can't get another full-on bill done because they can't get it to 60. They have to use reconciliation as well. So in March, that epic Sunday afternoon, Pelosi, with 254, finally got to 219 because one of the stalwarts of the life issue capitulated and crushed himself in a lifetime commitment to life by agreeing to vote for that Obamacare, which provided the
Yeah, I
deal.
remember
She
something.
got 219 votes out of 254.
Yeah.
Well, then they passed a second bill using reconciliations because they had to have 51 out of 59 when they got that done. So there were two bills that created Obamacare. One that passed the Senate with 60 votes in '09, and then that exact bill passed the House with 219. Everybody got across it. And then the second bill with 51 got about the same in the House. So we overpromised and we're under-delivered. That's what my worry was. Well, we can still get there, but we don't have the kind of, so even with those numbers, my point was, even with those kind of numbers they had, look, remember back how hard it was for the Democrats to move those big teams.
Absolutely.
And so I don't work for Mr. Trump, I work for you. And our two senators don't work for Mr. Trump, they work for you. And so, yeah, he's leading, and I'm agreeing with what he wants to do. We are shoulder to shoulder with what he wants to do. Some of the hows, it's just kind of jammed up, but the what, man, we're spot on, we were trying to get there.
But why is there so much infighting in the Republican Party?
Because we're all independent contractors. And Republicans are a little more independent than our Democrat colleagues, right? So I have a voting card, and I use it, and it belongs to you. And so I'm listening to you, what you're trying to tell me, and I'm doing these town halls, Lions Club at Colorado City a while ago, headed down to Lake Buchanan here in a few minutes. I'm listening to what you're telling me to do. Well, all members are doing that. And while the District 11 is pretty unified, it's either the or second most conservative district in all of the country.
Wow.
Nancy Pelosi has protesters at her home because she's too conservative. So the voters are telling members of Congress to do, and so we're all up there trying to represent our district, trying to represent what you want to do. And so, but on the Republican side, we're pretty independent. Paul Ryan has no leverage over me. He's nothing he can do to me. You're the only folks that can do something to me. That's vote me out of office, right? So I'm trying to take your voice to DC and your position, that kind of stuff. Well, all the other 239 House Republicans are doing the same thing. So we're independent contractors. No one has any leverage over us. We're just trying to get to as good an answer as we can using the tools that the Constitution provides for us. So that's part of what's going on.
I guess my question goes back to, if they're working for us, the people, why are they fighting amongst themselves?
Well, they're fighting
Even though they're independent
Yeah,
contractors.
they're fighting on behalf of their constituents. And the constituents are divided. Every national poll out there shows, 50-50. I mean, our country is not unified on a move forward position. And so the Democrats who represent and we've got 25 seats where Nancy Pelosi won the general election and a Republican won the congressional seat. That's a pretty uncomfortable spot to be in. And so that person cannot vote the way I do. Donald Trump got 77% of the vote in District 11. I'm pretty confident where my vote needs to be and the backing I've got. But if he'd gotten 49%, Pelosi got 48%, then there's a lot of folks out there that I've got to listen to because that's a representative form of government. And so it's, the country is divided. The populace is, everybody's got the different ideas. Part of our struggle is that we're the most conservative. We hang out with all the other conservatives. We only listen to Fox. And so we kind of think everybody else thinks the way we do. And they don't. I wish they would. But so that's part of the frustration. Yes, ma'am.
So you're listening to all of your people telling you
Trying to.
what they're wanting. So as a rural community, what are they telling you to go back to the Hill and say?
You want a strong rural development title in the Farm Bill. You want the programs we have there that affect rural development strengthened if we can. We're going to have hard choices with respect to money because I'm not going to have as much money as I had as available in 14. So we're going to have to work those programs with less resources. But it's about rural development. Broadband is a big piece. Do things that can set the stage for allowing rural communities to prosper themselves. It is not the federal taxpayer's responsibility to prosper County and Ballinger. It is your responsibility. You set the local framework for making that happen. My job is to try to set the federal overlay that allows that to happen. Taxes, regulations, those kind of things, and then those kind of targeted programs that can help in that regard. Yes, ma'am.
You talked about budgeting a little bit, and from my understanding that we kind of hit the debt ceiling.
Uh-huh.
And that we're about to kind of talk about if we will raise it or what we're doing with it soon. And so I went, where is the money coming from to help Hurricane Harvey victims? And what y'all are gonna do about it? Where does that money come from?
Well, that's to be determined. It will be a combination, in all likelihood, of not spending money somewhere else in the federal government that we thought we'd spend, which is what you'd have to do, and families and businesses have to do almost exclusively, and we'll borrow some of it, in all likelihood. It's gonna come. Anybody who wants to loan money to the U.S. taxpayer. Right now, the American bond, Treasury notes, Treasury bills, Treasury bonds are the safest investment in the world, because the world believes at its core that there is no credit risk on buying U.S. bonds. That there's a risk in the time value of money, that in terms of getting paid back, the American taxpayer will always pay its debts. Well, as our debt grows, at some point in time, somebody in the world is going to say, wait a minute, there may need to be a credit risk premium in our interest rates, because our interest rates now pretty just warehouse kind of raising. So, but it'd be a combination of, I'm hoping more of it will be not spending money somewhere else. That's the best deal. If we get 100% there, that'd be great. I don't think the compromise will allow us to do that. I don't think we have 218 votes in the House and 60 votes in the Senate to make that happen. So in all likelihood, there'll be some sort of a blend to do that. Yes, ma'am.
I have two kind of unrelated questions. Number one, I am not in support of the healthcare reform bill. I don't think it's a good bill. I don't think it should go through.
Okay.
And one of the reasons is it's just so partisan. You said that the Democrats really pushed through Obamacare. Well, now it seems like the Republicans are trying to push through their own healthcare bill. And I dislike it because I think there should be more collaboration between the two groups. I think more people should be able to agree on it for it to be a good bill. So do you think that's a problem, that it is so partisan? And then second, which is unrelated, what do you think of net neutrality?
Okay. So the net neutrality is easier. We want an internet that is as free of interference as we can possibly get it, and it's as fair to everybody can allow for the continued development, growth, and the speed signal and all that kind of good stuff. And so we have a wonderful name. Net neutrality assumes that that's what they did at the FCC. That's not what they did. They went the other way. And so we're trying to have this internet as free and unfettered as we possibly can. And some of that means letting the buyer beware that there's a chance that you could find something on the internet that is wrong, or you did the regulation, so not regulating it any more than we just absolutely have to. So that's the direction. Healthcare, the well is so poisoned. Right? The Democrats did it 100% by themselves. Not one Republican voted for it. Well, we're in a spot where we probably this second round is going to be all Republicans. Maybe the third round we'll see the error of our ways and try to be more collaborative among ourselves. But I don't see that happening with this round because it's just so tainted. So, the Democrats are not going to help at all because we make them so mad and insulted them so often. So they're not going to help at all. So maybe once we get our version done, if it's not working, then I hope we're not so hidebound to what we decided that we are unwilling to fix the things that don't work the way we think they will. The Democrats were so unwilling to address any of the fixes that until we got charged, that they were still there and in charge. They didn't want to change Obamacare at all. It was safe. It was perfect, right? So then Republicans take over, and the flaws and the errors of Obamacare begin to show up. The collapse that it is, now they want to fix. So they're a little hypocritical. So just pragmatic. We're going to do this with ourselves. Then maybe that third one we can get to. Now, make sure, have you asked one yet?
No, but I'm going to.
No, I was just trying to make sure we get around. Yes, sir.
Now, Mike, you may remember from Republican convention, my thing was the 10th Amendment. On the medical, that's 100% by the Constitution, states' rights. We shouldn't even have it in the federal government. Why don't we just put it on the states and give them their chunk of money and let them work it out and forget about it?
Well, you saw on our bill, which does that for Medicare, Medicaid, for years, everybody's been preaching, block grant that to the states, let it grow based on population or whatever, but let the states run their indigent population deal, right, with federal resources. And sounds great on paper. So when we get to a position of doing that, then some of our Republican governors began to go, well, I'm not sure I want that deal. So not unlike education, if we can get the federal government out altogether, yeah, but we've got a Medicare system, we've got a VA system, we've got, you know, a variety of federally programs now, Medicaid, that means that we're not gonna we're not gonna step away from that arena the way that you'd kind of like to. So the question is, how do you have a government monopoly that does what it does and still run a free market delivery system that allows for profiting and all this kind of good stuff? And that's where we're at. And I want to continue to, I don't want to go to a single payer, because that soon revolves into a delivery system that gets swept up under it as well, whether immediately or long term. That's what happens. If I'm setting what you're going to make and you can't deliver that service, then I'll have to create a system that does deliver the service, So not interested in that. 10th Amendment, spot on, but you know, there's the ideal, and then it's the rational, where you are right now, and can you get to that ideal anytime soon? And I don't see us getting to that ideal anytime soon.
Long term.
Yes, sir. Yes, yes, ma'am.
She mentioned the debt ceiling earlier. Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure.
Are we right here?
All right, so by statute, we limit the amount of money that the federal government can, the amount of debt that the federal government can issue, the amount of money can borrow. And we're right now at about $20 trillion. $20 trillion. I'm a CPA, used to be a banker, been in Congress for 12 plus years, used to deal with big numbers. I don't really have any real sense of how much money $20 trillion. How much money would you have to spend in 1 year on a per second basis to spend $1 trillion in 1 year? How much would you have to spend every second a year to spend $1 trillion? $33,000 a second. To get to $1 trillion. So we set that limit. Separate and apart from that limit set is all the other stuff we do. We set up programs, we set up mandatory spending like Medicare, which says once you become 65, if you've paid into the system, then you automatically get those benefits, you can step into it. Whether the country can afford it or not, you get that. We also spend other money, right? And that's what we're doing. Well, that reconciliation doesn't really take place the way it would in most places, right? So the periodic arguments we have on debt ceiling is typically associated with a White House with one party, Congress and a different party, and so we use that as leverage against each other to get the White House to do something or Congress to do something they wouldn't have otherwise done. The best time it was when Clinton was in the White House and Republicans controlled the House and Senate. They were able to use the debt ceiling to get Clinton to agree to do some stuff that he wasn't going to agree to anyway. Right? So that's that leverage that makes it happen. Throughout the Obama years, the 6 years that we were in the majority in the House, and the last 2 years that we were in the Senate, that's what was going on. Right? We're trying to use that as a weapon to do it. But now we got all three. We got all three. So who do you leverage the debt ceiling with, right? It's important, but every moment we're talking about the debt ceiling, which is basically saying, I'm going to pay the bills I've committed to spend already. I've already incurred. I want to pay those by borrowing the money to make that happen. So it's a cash flow tool. Every moment we talk about that is a moment that we're not talking about spending or taxes or the real drivers to why we have a deficit. So we'll run, last number I had in my hand was a $500 billion deficit at the federal level through the end of September. I think it'd be higher than that. That means that the revenue coming in was $500 or $600 billion less than the money we spent. Well, we don't print the money, you have to borrow the money. And so that's what we're talking about, is borrow that difference. Now the budget that you see we will do, because it is so hard to turn this aircraft carrier around, what's my aircraft carrier guy? You don't turn them on a dime. The budget that you see us vote for this month or next will show a path to getting to a break even. Right? The first step in doing an unwinding debt is to quit borrowing more money. And so over a 9.5 year period, you'll see us with provisions get to that break even point. The Republican Study Committee will have a budget that probably gets to a break even in about 6 years, and I'll vote for that one as well. But the first step is to quit digging the hole deeper, and that means getting control of spending. And so we can argue the debt ceiling and all that kind of stuff, but that's really about getting mad at your credit card company for sending you a bill for money you've already spent and then say, well, I'm not gonna pay that because I just don't like it. Well, don't spend it over there. Well, that's where we need to get with respect to the debt ceiling. So you saw, President Trump said, let's put that on the Harvey deal. So put it as a part of that. So the folks who want to vote for the Harvey support or fix will have to vote for the debt ceiling because it's stuck in there, all this kind of game. So you'll see games played over the next 30 days. But Treasury Department decides at what point they pull money on that, they borrowed money within the system from trust funds and everything else. If they have to go back into the market to borrow new money, we borrow money every Monday and Tuesday from the system, but typically it's to pay off debt that's matured. So we borrow enough to pay off that and that kind of thing. But anyway, that'll be this month, and it's basically to pay for stuff we already spent, and it's the right thing to do, and you use it to get the other party to do something that they shouldn't want to do. Well, we're 240 in the House and 251 and 52 in the Senate and the White House. We ought to be able to fix that. Now, debt ceiling increases are the responsibility of the majority. When I was 4 years, I was in the minority, Pelosi was in charge, I didn't vote for any debt ceilings. That's the majority's deal, right? Well, we're in the majority, we've got that hard responsibility of cash flow in this government, and that's what we're going to talk about. Yes, ma'am.
The windfall for Social Security against educators, when will that be eliminated?
It will, my patented answer was, I've co-sponsored the fix every time I'm in Congress. The value of having Texas Republicans in charge of committees, Kevin Brady is now in charge of Ways and Means. And so when that bill would be introduced and go to Ways and Means, and you had a guy in charge of Ways and Means from a state that didn't have that problem, whose teachers didn't have that problem, didn't have it. Brady has a lot of teachers who ask him that exact question, and it's his committee. So, a little movement. The real fix, though, will come when the first time we have a chance to redo Social Security, raise the retirement age, do the other things we need to do. We'll be given an opportunity. I don't think we'll fix that on a standalone basis, although I've co-sponsored the bill, we'd vote for it if it came forward. I don't know that it's just going to be there. But just because we've got about 17 years to fix Social Security so that we don't have a cash flow problem there, doesn't mean we need to take all 17 of those years to get it done. We need that now. And if we do that now, then we can address the government teaching offside and the wreck that is Texas teachers who are in both systems.
Somebody else had one before me.
Oh, yeah.
So on health insurance and healthcare bill,
okay.
We've trained everybody that you can go to the emergency room, you're not gonna die. We're gonna take care of you. Seems like we've trained everybody over time that we're gonna have eventually a socialized system just because we keep covering everybody. How do we back off of that? Can you explain the deal more? I mean, what Republicans are trying to do, because it seems like we're headed that way where everybody expects to be paid. We don't know what it costs to go to the doctor if you do have insurance, because it's the same copay anywhere you go. We just dropped our insurance. I still cover my employees on a group plan, but my family, we went to a Medishare plan because it's so much cheaper and better coverage.
Well, there's some flaws in the current system, some of which we're addressing and some of which we're not. The single biggest flaw is that we don't have the power of the cost-benefit analysis system that you and I use on every other thing we buy. Every other thing. Maybe quick, but it may be whatever. So, and it will work in healthcare. Now, it doesn't right now because we don't have the system set up, except in LASIK eye surgery. LASIK eye surgery is elective. It's not paid for by insurance. What's happened? The cost has gone from $3,000 an eye to $300 an eye. And why? Because the guy who wants it done goes to several different providers and say, how do you do it? What do you charge? That pressure has pulled it down. Providers are doing more eyes, they're making money. I'm getting what I want at a price I can afford, and the tools are getting better. So cost benefit analysis work. If I need my hip replaced, I've got some time to think about what is the hospital and all that. I should be able to shop that, right? Now, if Evan and I and Suzanne get run over out here, take us to the closest ER, not the cheapest ER. But there's an awful lot of healthcare where we ought to be able to use the power of our own purse to do that. Well, our system's not set up that way. So resetting that whole deal is not part of what we're doing, but it's a big piece of what should be. Now, it does come into play with strengthening health savings accounts. Ted Cruz had had a bill that, an amendment to the bill that strengthened health savings accounts, and allowing you to accumulate money for, in the years that you don't need it, to have it available when you do. You know, those are, because you know, if I've got car insurance, right? Well, if I need the windshield wipers changed, I don't file an insurance claim. Right? I just come out of current cash flow. There's certain things about this body that I ought to be coming out of current cash flow, and not necessarily worry about insurance companies, right? But I've got insurance on my car for the catastrophic. Well, health insurance, we need to reset that. You know, a pair of glasses, you shouldn't be on a plan that you're gonna need your teeth checked twice a year, glasses and all this kind of stuff. We don't do that because we built this first dollar insurance scheme that we think was a better model, and quite frankly, it's not. So what we'd like to do is we wanna, one of the Obamacare flaws is it said every insurance policy has to cover all 10 of these essential benefits. Well, you may not need all those covered, but you're paying for them. So allowing health insurance companies under their state regulator to create plans that meet a more tailored need for you, bring that cost down and provide you with kind of what you want to do. That's part of it. Not a part of this plan, but a part of the broader what we need to do is allowing us to have insurance compete across state lines, allowing associations to create health groups to be able to compete those and make them more attractive to business, to insurance companies, that kind of thing. There's some things that we need to do that aren't in our healthcare bill because they take 60 votes in the Senate, not that 51 vote. A quick one on the 51 versus 60. The penalty for not having insurance. You as an individual have a penalty that you should pay if you don't have insurance, or a company would pay if they're big enough they don't provide insurance. In our bill, we set that penalty at 0, so that even it's still the penalty, the system's still there, but the penalty's 0. To strip out the language that creates that penalty takes 60 votes. To set the penalty at 0 takes 51. So when you have people say, "Well, you didn't fully repeal it," no, I set the penalty at 0, but to eliminate the actual requirement took 60 votes. Right? I don't have 60 votes.
Why do you want to do away with the death tax now? Why you got 60 votes?
Yeah, I got 51, exactly. So, strengthening the individual market is the key. Now, the company market for big companies, the premiums have gone up, but there's pretty vibrant market there. And everybody on public assistance, whether it's VA guys or Medicare, Medicaid, TRICARE, those systems are working as well. So it's really just the individual market that's collapsed under Obamacare. And we're trying to address how do you do that? How do you allow companies to compete in a market where they can create a product that you'll buy, that you want, and they can make money at it? Because you're not making money at the way it's set up in the individual market. And that's the whole plan. None of us want to screw it up worse. None of us want to have all these unintended consequences. And that's part of why we're trying to get the Senate to do something, so we can have further discussions about what it should look like as we move forward, even though we'll do it without any Democrat help. So that's the idea, is to get you more in charge of your health care, make it more portable, so that if you're in the individual market, you can move it and have your policy, that kind of stuff. So that's the plan. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Is tort reform part of that conversation?
Medical tort reform. Yes, sir.
I'm gonna go back to Harvey a little bit.
Okay.
Here at community, I think everybody's kind of watching, there was so much devastation down there in the agriculture area, particularly cotton and cattle. What are you guys, I think we were watching that because, what if something like that happened out this way? What kind of federal?
Well, the safety net's already in place.
Okay.
Right? It's crop insurance, it's indemnity for cattle that were killed and that deal. So we've got the system in place. Now, it's not as fulsome as you'd like, but it is there, and they knew about it ahead of time, and they're not worried about us some ad hoc kind of fix that might or might not work. The problem with our cotton guys in the South is they had crop insurance, but they were also expecting record yields. So before Harvey, they're looking at this cotton tall up, and they're thinking 3-4 bales an acre. This is going to be a big year for them. The price is a little bit better, not still good, but they're going to make a yield. You've seen pictures of modules in the field that just obliterated, blown everywhere. Round bales sitting in water. That all ruined. They can't get the steam back. They can't get anything. It's ruined. The insurance covers their average yield. And they were expecting of it. Huh? A portion of it. Yeah. A portion of it. Yeah. But the first step is average yield, right? They were expecting much higher yields. And so from an emotional standpoint, they're really hammered because they're whipsawed from one to the other. Even the guys that hadn't harvested yet, the wind and rain has obliterated much of that as well. And so it's hard stuff. We have the silver lining in this dark cloud that is Harvey is being able to point to why we need this safety net. So I've got to get a farm bill written for next year. I'll be able to point to the wreck that's happened in South Texas and the response that the safety net had is that that's why we need a fulsome safety net. Getting caught back under Title I will be an important piece of that because they only had two different kind of insurance policies, and the one that we took as replacement for Title I didn't work. Most folks didn't buy it, and so I'll be able to use that horrible circumstances that they found themselves in as conversation with the rural, the urban people who, why do you need that? Why is that important, et cetera, et cetera. There's nothing better than a, round bale of cotton sitting in the water. That's why we need protection for our guys.
Okay, thank you.
Mike, I got a question real quick.
Oh, yeah.
You serve on the Armed Services Committee, probably lost and rightly so maybe, when Monday, our friends over in North Korea launched a ballistic missile over the Sea of Japan, actually over Japan. Two questions. How big of a threat is North Korea strategically to us, and what can we do about that?
Well, we continue to develop missile defense as we're doing. You saw a test that we've had where we shot down a couple recently. The problem with missile defense is we've got to be 100% accurate. And if you're lobbing nuclear weapons, you don't have to be 100% accurate to direct it. North Korea is not an essential threat to us. He doesn't have the volume Soviet Union have, the Russians have, maybe the Chinese have. He can't hurt all of us, but he can hurt some of us. And so how do you protect against that? Kim Jong-un, KJU, I think has a pretty strong self-preservation gene. He wants to stay leader of that country. He wants to continue doing what he's doing. And he knows that if he shoots at us, we will kill him. Now, hundreds of thousands of other people will die. And so avoiding that is a pretty good idea, but we'll take that guy out. The thing to worry about is we try to work with China and others to try to push him to quit doing those kind of stuff. If we make it so difficult, I'm sure how you can make it any more difficult as for life in North Korea. Go to the internet when you get a chance, pull up North Korea at night. Google North Korea at night, and you will see the peninsula. You'll see the southern portion of it lit up like a Christmas tree. You'll see China across the north lit up, and you'll see a black hole, except for one little dot, which is Pyongyang. And that's North Korea. I mean, it's awful. It's just, these folks are subsistence farmers of the worst order. They're in two different sectors from where we are. So if he gets to the point where he's threatened at losing it, he might lash out and do something as a result. But I think we're going to have to continue to get China to push on it, we're pushing on it. But in the meantime, we've got to make our missile defense better and better and better. And that's that. There's actually the president had when he came up with his budget, had reduced missile defense spending, and on the bill that we passed in July, we sent that money back in there and increased I think to just because of when the president did his budget, we weren't seeing the kind of ruckus that Kim Jong-un is up to right now.
Do you think he would move on Seoul?
What's that?
Do you think he'd move on South Korea before he would do something? And
who knows what he might do? He can within artillery range of North Korea is about 25 million. Several million South Koreans, and we've moved our folks south of the artillery range, but before we could get it stopped, the artillery fire coming out of North Korea at such a volume of what he's got would kill hundreds of thousands of people in a very short period of time. We will take that out, but we can't get at it right off the bat, and a lot of folks will die. So whether that's his first shot or his talk about reducing America to ashes or Great Britain to ashes, that is not for our consumption. That is for internal consumption only. He knows he can't do that. But what the argument he's kept alive, him and his father's grandfather, is that America is just about to invade again Korea, like they did in '52. Well, kind of a twist on history. They picked that fight, everything's pushed it back in there, right? So, but the fact that we sent troops across the 30th parallel, at 52 or 3, that's the threat. But for Kim Jong-un, South Koreans and Americans would be here right now. The Chinese we have a common goal in one area, and that is no nuclear North Korea, but they don't want a reunified peninsula. Because they know that what will happen there is what happened in East Germany, West Germany. The South Koreans will take over, and they'll have a U.S. ally right on the border. They don't want that, and they don't want a humanitarian crisis. They don't want a failed regime because millions of South Koreans and North Koreans will flood into China because they've been told how scared they should be of the South Koreans, so they'll go north, and China doesn't want that either. So.
Congressman, we're right at about 4.
Okay.
Have we,
Before you go, anybody else hadn't got to ask?
have we authorized the tactical moves back into South Korea so we can head off that you're talking about, them annihilating South Korea?
Yeah.
Okay. I know Obama pulled them out. I didn't know if we got them back.
Yeah. President Trump said he's not going to telegraph his punches. Again, thanks to City Council. So I'm not going to answer. Thanks everybody. Thanks City Council. This month we will celebrate the 230th anniversary of our Constitution. A living document in the sense that our founding, the framers put together behind closed doors, our term limits. They went into that issue to try to reset the Articles of Confederation. They locked themselves up. They nailed the windows shut from the outside, put guards out, and did what they did behind closed doors with no transparency whatsoever. Madison and others decided we needed a Constitution, so they came out of that deal with our Constitution, and we ratified it in September of 1787. Benjamin Franklin, who was the oldest guy there, said, when it came out, was confronted by a lady named Mrs. Powell, and she said, "Good doctor, what have you given us, a monarchy or a republic?" And he looked at her and said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." Think about that, if you can keep it. We are today the keepers of the republic. Now, only self-governing people can keep a republic. Only folks who elect members of Congress, elect the president, and self-govern can maintain a republic, because once you go to a different scheme, then the republic is lost. John Adams wrote that only a moral and religious people can self-govern, that our form of governance is unsuitable for immoral and amoral people because they lie, cheat, and steal, and they don't obey the rules. And as I look at our country today, I'm deeply concerned that we're losing the moral high ground in which to maintain self-governance and, by extension, protect the republic and keep the republic. I've taken an oath several times, the Army, Congress, to defend our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Many of you have taken that exact same oath. We've got men and women in harm's way right this second who have got their oath backed up by the risk of their lives. What I'm going to ask you to do, I was asking you to ask yourself, what are you willing to risk to keep the republic? What are you going to risk to maintain that oath that you might have taken at one point in time? I can't legislate morality. I can't do it here in the City Council, Chambers, County Commissioners, Courts, Austin. This is something that I have to do and you have to do. We reclaim that moral high ground by going after that hard, arduous task of standing up for the traditional values, the core values and truths, biblical truths, yes, it is biblical, that have built and sustained this country for 230 years. Those are at risk of being devalued and to the point that we will lose the moral high ground. You got to live a code. I live the Judeo-Christian model. Jesus Christ is my personal Savior. I try to live His tenets every day, and some days I'm better at it than others. But you have to live a code as well. You and your family, all of us have those concentric rings of influence where we have to begin to defend the values that sustain our republic. Because if we don't, we will lose it. So think about what you're willing to risk. Are you willing to risk embarrassment, some pushback, some disdain of the folks that disagree with us? That's up to you to decide. Think about those good men and women in Korea, other places around the world that have got guns pointed at them right this second, and what they're willing to risk on behalf of this republic. I'm asking you to pick up your effort, your side of defending this republic. Because if we don't, then we'll lose it. It's a republic, madam, if you can keep it. We're today's keepers. I want somebody standing in front of a self-governing group of folks 200 or 460 years from now, making sure it's still there. It's our responsibility to make that. God bless each one of you. God bless Texas. And God bless the United States. Thank you all very much.
Thanks so much. That was so good.